Hi, this is Robert with Cruzbike, and today we're going to put together a Cruzbike T50. The first thing we want to do is unpack all of the individual loose elements in the package, including the parts box, seat, rear seat stay, and any other accessories that are packed with your bike. Once all the loose items are unpacked, the bike should lift right out of the box. Once it is out of the box, we'll want to lay it on its side and remove the zip ties that hold the wheels in place. Very carefully remove all of the zip ties and start removing the protective packaging from the frame and other parts of the bike. Once you've removed all of the zip ties and started removing a lot of the protective packaging, we can open the frame and lay the bike on its side as seen in the video here. Now is a good time to open the parts box and get everything out, including the pedals, seat pan, and all of the hardware that you're going to need to finish assembly of the bike. You should have some seat skewers, wheel skewers, riser tube, and other various hardware for attaching the seat to the seat stay and also to the seat pan. Now that we have everything set aside and our packaging removed, we're going to stand the frame up on its end, and we will position the derailleur over on the right side of the bike, the caliper on the left side of the bike to make it easy to access those later, and begin assembly of the front end. It is much easier to insert the riser into the pivot clamp if we first loosen the boom clamp. That way we can pivot the clamp back and forth on the fork steer tube, making it easy for us to slide the riser in. You will note there's a slot on the back of the riser. The slot should face the back of the bike. That way the clamp will be effective in pinching it against the steer tube. We're going to maneuver the riser tube right in there. It might require you to tap the top of it in to seat it all the way down into the pivot clamp. Then we will use our 5mm Allen to tighten the pivot clamp bolts. Make them a good 3/4, half to 3/4 turn past snug to prevent slippage. The next step is to attach the stem. We're going to remove the rubber plug from the stem bolt and use our 5mm Allen to undo the top cap. Slide the stem over the riser tube. Reinstall our cap. Make sure the stem is in good alignment with the slider tube, and then we will tighten the stem bolts. Using our number 4 Allen, we're going to loosen all of the handlebar clamp bolts and remove the clamp itself so we can install the handlebars to the stem. Take note, the handlebars really only go in one position. The levers should be facing forward with the shifter on the right. The cables should be out in front of the handlebars and in front of the steer tube. Once we have the handlebar in position, we will put the clamp back on and tighten the bolts. A good starting position for the handlebars is to have them basically straight up and down with the ground. Now we will install the seat plate onto the bottom of the seat. We want to take note of the orientation and make sure that it is located as far forward on the seat as seen in the video. We will use our 6mm bolts, washers, and nylock nuts to tighten the plate to the seat base. Once we have installed the seat pan, then we can install the lower portion of the seat onto the frame. Once we have the tabs down on the frame struts, we can insert our quick releases and tighten the quick release skewers. Using some 6mm button head bolts, we're going to put them through the seat back. Then we will insert some of the plastic spacers, hold them in place, and install the seat back onto the seat bottom. Then we will use some washers and nylock nuts on the bottom, and we will tighten the nylock nuts until they are just flush with the end of the bolt, or are just taking up the slack and not over tightening the plastic spacer. That leaves a little bit of room for the seat to move back and forth to change the seat angle. Now we want to remove the top seat attachment from the rear seat struts, and we will use our M5 hardware to attach it to the back of the seat. We will now attach the rear seat struts to the frame. It is much easier to do this if we loosen the clamps that hold the struts in place. Otherwise, it might be at the wrong angle. If we loosen the clamps on the seat struts, it will allow us to pivot it back and forth and get it in the correct position and even with the seat. If your seat struts look crooked, as in shown in the video, it is simply because the clamps halfway up need to be loosened, as shown in the video, and then the entire assembly can be pivoted side to side to line up with the top of the seat clamp. Moving to the front of the bike, we will now install the pedals. Please note that on the inside of the pedals, there should be a very small left or L or R for right. The right goes on the drive side, or the right side of the bike if you are sitting on it, and the left goes on the non-drive crank. Using our 6mm Allen in the J-Cool tool, we will thread the pedals into place. Now, laying the bike on its side, we will install the rear derailleur. Please note that the bolt that holds the derailleur hanger in place should be installed in the hanger. There is a tab on the derailleur that goes up against the derailleur hanger. You will want to make sure that that tab is in the correct position, and then once you have verified that, tighten the derailleur hanger bolt with a 5mm Allen. Next, we will install the skewer for the drive wheel with the lever on the rotor side of the wheel. We have our derailleur installed, so we are ready to install the front wheel onto the bike. We're going to take the bike. We don't want to set it on the derailleur hanger because we don't want to bend the hanger or the derailleur. We will hold it in place and insert the front wheel into the fork. If you have to get down by the ends of the fork to spread the dropouts just a little bit, be cautious with your hands around the rotor surface. And once the wheel is in the holes for the dropout, the wheel should go into place on the fork. And once we have secured that, we will tighten the skewer. The next step is aligning the front brake caliper onto the rotor using a 5mm Allen. We will remove the screws from the spacer and we will insert the caliper over the rotor as shown here in the video and tighten those bolts with a 5mm Allen as shown. Please note that there still might be some adjustment needed to the disc brakes during final assembly. To do the adjustment for the caliper, we can loosen the back bolts that align the caliper to the rotor, and we can move it side to side if needed for better alignment. Moving to the back of the bike, we will insert the skewer the same way we did with the front, with the lever on the rotor side. We have now blocked the front wheel in a rack stand so the bike will stand upright by itself. And now we will lift up the back of the bike. We will align the rear rotor between the calipers carefully, and we will set the frame down on top of the axle. And once that is in place, we will tighten the rear wheel skewer. Similar to the front caliper, we will need to loosen the bolts that hold it in alignment. Make sure it is aligned with an even space between the rotor, and then tighten the caliper. Now moving towards the front of the bike, we will install the chain, which we will drape over the front chain ring or over the pedal just to keep it out of the way. We will rotate the chain over the top of the cassette and then over the top jockey pulley of the derailleur. And then we will avoid the tab in between the cages, and we will route the pulley around the bottom jockey wheel. Then we will locate our quick release pins. We will put one end on one side of the chain, insert the other side in the opposite end, and then clip them together. You may be able to use enough force to pull the chains in the opposite direction to seat the quick release. If it does not seat, you can very carefully rotate the chain to the top as shown in the video, and then when you push on the pedal to put pressure on the chain, it will seat the quick link. Finally, we will install the Velcro onto the back of the seat, remove the adhesive backing, and then install the seat cushion on to the aluminum seat. And that completes your assembly of your own Cruzbike T50.